Welcome to another episode of How I'm Building This, where we interview startup founders in the thick of building their businesses. We learn from their mistakes and get practical tips for overcoming challenges. Today we have Spencer from Aidium. Spencer, how are you today? Thank you so much for joining. Of
Yeah, I'm good. No, thanks for having me on. Yeah, excited to connect.
course. Spencer, before we, of course, jump into the business, would love to learn, who's Spencer, where did you grow up, and what really got you into entrepreneurship?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been an entrepreneur most of my life. Starting at the end of high school, I helped start the nonprofit Hands for Others. It was essentially like a crowdfunding platform before the GoFundMe's of the world existed. And we
Sure.
gave high school, college students the opportunity to raise funds and awareness to solve the world's water crisis. I guess to make a long story short, that project really took off. We did Project 17 countries around the world. I ultimately did a TED Talk about it, and just through that, really just fell in love with, uh, finding problems. I would say I'm kind of the obsessive problem solver type, and so really just, finding problems that I could kind of use technology to maybe help solve at scale. And so, I guess coming out of college, dabbled with different startup interests. Like most startup founders, the first couple things you do, you run into some brick walls and hopefully learn some lessons from it. And eventually sort of made my way to a company that I started that was doing predictive data and lead generation in the real estate space, which was ultimately acquired. And through that, got just very familiar with sort of the real estate ecosystem, technologies, parties involved. And that's what sort of led me to Aidium, which is what I'm doing now. So yeah, it's been a fun journey. And from California, now live in Boulder, Colorado, and I have two little kids. So it's it's just life, a lot going on. It seems like.
That's amazing. I have to ask, with two kids, how do you manage the family and work? I know I struggle. I have two girls, 8 and 6. They are so much fun, but such a handful. And, sometimes it's just like, I know that I have to work, but I cannot.
I think it's different for everybody and how they can do it.
Sure.
And I think for me, it's my personal hobbies have suffered for sure, and that's okay because I enjoy
Yeah.
spending time with my kids. And my wife is a therapist, so she sort of works part time, and also is able to work the kids. So everyone's in a different situation, and I think we're figuring out what works best for us. But yeah, for me, it's been, I have obviously tremendous responsibilities at ADM and with our employees, investors, everything. And so I've got to meet those. And then I've got a responsibility to my family, of course. And so maybe it means there's a few less trail runs or, rounds of golf, in my day to day these days. And that's okay, right? You just have to prioritize and do the best you can. So.
Absolutely. Spencer, I saw that, that you all raised a Series A like earlier this year. In this tough funding environment, what were some of the things that you all did to essentially prep, for this race?
Yeah, look, I think we're very blessed in the USA to just have so many, capital options.
Sure.
And I think what's important is two things, is it's to find a fund. I think the mistake maybe that a lot of entrepreneurs make, and I've certainly made, is you think, well, I'm just so desperate for money, I'll take money from anybody. So it's like I'll just talk to everybody and anybody. And well, the reality is most funds are not going to invest in you. And that's just because like they have a thesis of what they invest in. Maybe they've deployed a lot of capital this year already, right? Or just there are so many factors outside of your control as to why a fund would invest or not invest in you, right? And so what's really critical is to kind of narrow that lens a bit and find people that where it's actually an option. And so for us, we do stuff, in mortgage lending, kind of
Sure.
across the sort of property tech stack. And so for us, it was really finding who are VCs that fund businesses at our stage, what we're looking for in property tech or fintech. Let's go there. So let's narrow the scope because these people at least would invest in something we're doing, right? So
Sure.
and so I think that's a mistake a lot of people make is like I'm going to go talk to an investor who's never invested in my category. It's like, your pitch can be perfect, you can have great metrics, and they're still not going to invest in you, right? I mean, if you're doing something with blockchain and, this investment group's never invested in blockchain, go find someone that has, or it's on their website. We invest in blockchain, right? So I think taking a targeted approach and just really honing in the pitch, I think is key. And the reality is like anything, it takes practice, and it takes feedback, and a few iterations. And so I think it's finding a few people around you, or, a mentor or whoever, and just really going through the pitch, understanding what's resonating, what's not. And so, I think you want to try to get your pitch as refined and tight as possible. And then you gotta go out there and refine it as you go along to VCs. So I think that's key. And, I think VCs love to show progress. They talk to founders all the time that say, I'm going to hit these numbers in 6 months. And the reality is most people don't, right? But if you can tell them, hey, this is what we're doing and where we're going, and you're able to show that progress and traction, that is an amazing way to get people to throw some term sheets at you. And so I think, if you have the time, start building some of those relationships. Make sure you're building them with people that actually would put money into your category of business. And really just hone in on the pitch. It's like when you're selling something for the first time. You start the first time, it's like someone's kind of like looking at you like, what are you selling? And then the third, fourth, fifth time, you see some nods, and it's, and then you're like, okay, I'm onto something. And so you just got to put in the reps, so that's what I found to be helpful.
That's amazing. Spencer, what is the toughest part of being venture funded?
I think with everything, there's good and bad, right? So I think it's, you obviously have, a lot, capital, but you also have higher expectations, right? And I think not all VCs are created equal. The group that we work with has been, very supportive. We're very aligned on our goals and trajectory and everything. But look, it's if a lot of times as an entrepreneur, you're used to just kind of doing whatever you feel like you need to do whenever you need to do it. And that dynamic changes pretty quickly. You realize these people, they raised money from their limited partners, and they're invested in you and your business. And, you not only does their opinion matter, but you've got to also kind of keep in the loop of what's going on. And you've got to deliver. And, just like you would expect an employee to deliver that works for you, they're looking at you to deliver. And so I think trying to communicate as much as you can and as often as you can is helpful. And I think, communicating through the bad and the wins and building trust is really important. And, but, I think also just the partner that you're working with matters. And, I think for us, there's been ups and downs on our growth trajectory. And I think as long as you see the end goal and you're aligned, I think that's what matters. And so I think that's something I would heavily advise anyone looking for funding to think through is am I pushing, unicorn or bust? Like, if you're not, then don't partner with a VC that's unicorn or bust, because that's what they're expecting out of you. They're not saying, great, you tripled my money. Awesome. If you're more kind of growth stage, which sort of we are, and like you're in a growth, you find a growth investor, they get a 3-4x on their money. Like they're pretty happy about it. At least that's the expectation. Of course, everyone wants more, but we're not, so I just think it's understanding where you feel like the business can go, what you want to do, and just being really honest about the partner you're working with. Like, I think asking the criteria of what do you see as success? Like, how are you underwriting my business? I think it's a very important question to ask. And you start day one understanding where you're going.
I see that. Spencer, I'd love to get a take on hiring. So not only hiring when you are, starting up, but now when you are at Series A, has your thesis sort of changed between, what you would usually hire early? Versus now?
Yeah, definitely. So I think there's different phases. And so I think the first thing is like I've made so many mistakes with hiring, and you always are. It's like anything, until you do it a few times and make some
Yeah,
mistakes, it's hard to be good at it, right? And
yeah,
so I just think like I think the story that comes to mind is I was at a conference once with a bunch of other, whether it be kind of seed through Series B founders, and the speaker asked, who here has hired a director of sales and it didn't work out? Everybody raised their hand, and the answer is, well, you hired it too early, right? And so
yeah,
I think in the early days, it's really trying to help create that blueprint. So, like, for instance, on the go to market side, who am I selling to? How are we winning some deals? What can I kind of give someone to work with? And so I think the mistake a lot of founders make that are more product engineering oriented, which is me, I'm much more of a product oriented founder. You think like, we've got this great product, I'm just going to find this person to come in and sell it. And you've been close to this problem for probably several years, and working on it, and have had so many conversations, and to expect them to come in 3 months, like really
yeah,
make some stuff happen, like that's unreal. It rarely works out that way, right? Versus, hey, we have 10 customers, here's why they bought, here's the people that were the decision makers, right? Like, hey, go find more people like this and pitch them like this and refine it. Very different, right? And the latter
yeah,
works, the first doesn't, right? And so I think there's that. And I think just, on the product side as well, like it's understanding that, again, you're really close to this problem, and you don't want to hand over too much responsibility kind of too quickly, I think, in the early stage. And it can be tempting, especially if you're growing fast. So, I've certainly made those mistakes. And then I think as you get a little bit bigger, you start to build out departments in your executive team. And
yeah,
I think, and that's where you have, people under you that are managing people, or maybe even managers under them that are managing people. And I think what's key there is just a clear understanding of culture, like what are the values of the company, and hiring people that are those, uh, and understand and believe in those values, because you're not going to work or interact with everybody on a day-to-day basis. So I think, culturally you have to be aligned. I mean, sometimes there's this tendency to say like, I'm good at A and not good at B, therefore I'm going to get someone in here that's good at B. I mean, maybe, but if it's like, if you work a certain way and they work differently, it's not gonna work, right? And so it doesn't mean you don't want to help find people that can help you overcome sort of your weaknesses and round that out. But it just means that, like, just saying, oh well, this person's a lot tougher than me, or a lot, like whatever, more relaxed than me, I should hire. It's like, well, that you're going to create multiple cultures in your organization. Like, you have to kind of take what you stand for and push it forward. And I think, it's the whole saying, like, setting really clear expectations. What does success look like 90 days from now, 30, 60, 90 days. And, and really just, being very clear with exactly what you want and what the goals need to be. And again, I think as entrepreneurs, oftentimes we tend to be, we're used to taking the initiative and starting things on our own, and not everyone works that way. And so just to say, hey, go fix sales or fix the product or make our customers happy, that's, it's very rarely people are going to work well with that, versus saying, hey, look, we've got this level of churn, I need you to increase it X amount over the first 90 days. Or it takes 12 hours to give a support ticket resolution, I want that down to 6 hours. People can work with that and make that stuff happen, but people can't read your mind, as much as as we might, want them to be able to know exactly what we want. But that's, so, I mean, I made a bunch of mistakes. Those are the things that come to mind for me. Is just, it's, don't hire too early. Kind of be very clear with what you need, and what the goals are and what success looks like, and be very clear about the culture that you care about, and be selfish and guard that culture, right? You don't need to expand your culture. The culture is you, and you're the one pushing it, and be selfish with it.
that's for sure. I saw something on Twitter the other day where it basically said that from a sales perspective, less than 1 million, it's still founder-led sales. About 1 to 3 is when it's founder-managed sales. And I think 3+ is when you essentially go and hire like a sales leader, for the team. How accurate do you think that is in just terms of specific benchmarks when it comes to hiring for sales?
I think that's very accurate.
Okay.
I would say that it's more of like when you start to see some level of repeatability. So the way I would look at it is founder-led sales is you're figuring out how to sell your product. So maybe you have a good sales rep where it's like you're working deals together, you're figuring out how to win them, right? But you don't have someone managing that's like you're working directly with them. You're on the
Sure.
calls, you're getting the feedback, and so I think it's once that rep is able to close without you, you should hire another rep, right?
Okay.
Once you have a couple of reps, even two, maybe three that are actually reliably getting deals in, that's when you find the sales manager at that point. And I think a player coach is important. So I would look at it as ideally you have one rep, you're working, you figure it out, you get another rep that's winning deals. And then it's sort of who's that player coach. So they also are winning deals and then they're managing the other two. I think that's the ideal stepping stones. And then I think then at a certain point, you're bringing in more of the true manager or director to really kind of build out the team. But yeah, you don't, a lot of times we make the mistake of saying, great, my first sales hire is a director. And then it's like, no, your first sales hire should be someone, they should be getting deals before you hire anyone else on the sales side or even think about a manager. So, all things I wish I knew and everyone at that conference who raised their hand because everyone's made that mistake. Right?
I see that. Spencer, on your website, you say mortgage CRM software with intelligent automation. What's the pain you're solving and for whom?
Sure. So I guess the story would be when I was doing Lead Faucet, I was talking to a top producing loan officer who was buying some of our data and leads, and he was looking to get our stuff into his system. Obviously, at that point, we hadn't dealt a lot with lenders; it had mostly been realtors. And so I had him walk me through his tech stack, and he was using just one system for lead conversion, another for pipeline management, another for task management, and he had his corporate for marketing. He had a system for texting. I mean, just like 6 systems, and he had somebody trying to jerry rig them with Zapier and this whole ridiculous thing, right? And so that's the obsessive problem solver. I mean, like, well, this seems like a problem. Like, wouldn't you like one system to do that? And I remember asking him, I was like, well, so obviously, if you had an end-to-end solution that could do all 6 of these things in one, would you do it? It's like, of course I would. I mean, it's kind of a gotcha question, right? But then I remember asking him, like, well, so what is you work for like a bank, right? Like, how are they let you do this? He's like, well, I'm a top producer. They let me do what I want to do. And it's like, well, explain that to me. Like, well, I get all of my business from my referral partners. So if the bank doesn't like what I'm doing, I'll just go to another bank and I have my referral partners. It's like they're giving me leads. So it's like, oh, you actually have a lot of leverage here, and it was really interesting for me to understand that. And I asked him, like, well, you have this corporate system. Why don't they just kind of build out this flow for you? And it's like, well, because they can't. I was like, well, I'm sure they could get a consultant in there. He's like, no, I don't think you understand. Like, the technology, it can't. And so the technology is so antiquated, it just couldn't do, 90% of the stuff that he wanted to do. And so, and that's where I realized, like, okay, there is a real gap here between what this producer is looking to do and what the enterprise cares about: marketing, branding, compliance. But the producer says, hey, I have a way that I run my business. I have a lot of autonomy and I have some kind of power here because of how I generate my business. And so I think, like Aidium, the core problem we're solving is really bridging the gap between the enterprise and the producer. So helping the enterprise stay compliant, giving them the marketing, branding, tools they need, while giving the flexibility for the producers to do things their way, and kind of recreate that end-to-end workflow for them. So in essence, that's really that's the mission that we've been on.
That's very cool. So how did you go about, winning like your first few customers?
Well, one of our first customers was that guy.
Yeah.
uh, so I think, go and that it's kind of interesting to think from a go-to-market perspective. We started with a lot of these top producers because they were doing similar things, right? It's like they
Sure.
were jerry rigging this stuff together, and so they would do it, and then naturally others at like that particular bank were like, "Hey, what are wow, you're using this new system. You like?" So we would kind of start to expand within these companies we were in, and then it started to gradually work its way up where you'd have conversations with corporate, and obviously, corporate might greenlight it to start, but now they're thinking, well,
Yeah.
we're actually getting adoption here. Maybe we want to, bring this sort of org wide, and so I think for us, we started kind of more with the team kind of structure, and then have moved more enterprise. And that we could talk about that, but
Yeah.
I make it seem seamless, that transition. It was not at all. But that's sort of how we got our start and kind of where we sit today.
I was just actually going to ask, how did you get that transition going? I mean, I can only imagine going from an individuals to like a corporate level agreement must have been just a totally different go to market motion. I mean, how did you go about doing it?
Yeah, and I think it's also un- so I think it took a lot of trial and error, and there's a lot of
Sure.
false signals in there. So at that time, I hadn't read the book Crossing the Chasm, which if everyone has to read Crossing. If you want to be an entrepreneur, you have to read Crossing the Chasm. And for those of you that haven't read it, like the basic premise is that when you're new and you're doing something cool and innovative, a certain very small percentage of the population is going to gravitate towards it. But to get to the masses, you have to figure out how to cross the chasm. And so that was the case for us too. So what happened is we get top producers, we get in an enterprise, and we had some early adopter enterprises that were like, great, we like this, we want this, we're going to roll it out. And you start thinking, great, we're ready, we're going to win enterprise. With an early adopter persona, which especially in a financial industry, is very minuscule. Yes, we had extremely compelling, um, you know, pitch, but to an enterprise across the chasm, there were things that were missing, right? And
Sure.
so I think for us that we had to come to that realization. We had to figure out why people bought other software that was, kind of competitive or analogous to us across the chasm. What those boxes were that we need to check, and which checks were kind of fungible because we did other things better. And, really have those conversations like, how to, and sort of figure it out and put things on the roadmap and all that. And so, I think there's a play. So I think, my sense is any company looking to sort of cross that chasm, I do think you can double down and find those early adopters and keep the growth motion going. And you should. I think we probably took our foot off the gas a little bit there and looked too much across the chasm. So I think you keep it going. And then, I think you have to anticipate like it's going to take time and R&D and product development to really get across, right? And to also get your name out there and to be trusted. And so, it's usually not as seamless as we think it is, and it wasn't for us. So
I see that. So now today though, Spencer, like how are customers finding out about you? Like, do you have a big inbound game that you're playing? Is it predominantly outbound? What does that balance look like for you?
yeah, it's a combination. So the way I look at it is kind of your main channels. When you kind of get to more of a growth stage is in usually have one that's really working, or maybe you have a couple. Maybe it's an outbound channel where you have like your SDRs, your BDRs that are making calls, prospecting around a certain persona or logos that you want to win. You have a marketing team which is finding out how to get leads and people that kind of come to you. And then there's also like a partnership track as well,
Yeah.
which is we're partnering with other companies or organizations or whatnot. And then, I think there is a customer experience referral, kind of component as well. So I think for us, where we've done well is we've done pretty well on the marketing side because We have a lot of product velocity. It's not, in an industry that's really slow. We've been able to do a bunch of launches in the product, exciting things to really get in front of people. People want to take a look at it. I think we've done well on the customer experience, the sort of referral side. I think we're, working on, we have a partnership motion that's, is I think is going to be effective. And I think the outbound is something that we're continuing to sort of tinker with. And so, it's not to say you have to do all four. I think it's just, there's different tools for you. And so I think doubling, tripling, 10xing the stuff that's working is very important. But also, if you want, I think tinkering with it and, don't go hire 10 SDRs, but maybe hire one and see how it goes for a quarter. Right. And then decide if is there something there or not, I think is always, can be worthwhile for sure.
Yeah. Well, I'd love to, as in like jump into this. So when it comes to your like marketing game, you of course mentioned that they all are doing exceptionally well. What is it that you all are doing, number one, that will essentially create awareness about Aidium? And then number two, how does that awareness drive more leads to you?
Sure. So I think the question is, the first thing that you can do to help your marketing team as a founder or go-to-market leader or whatever is be very precise. Who are we targeting, and which people are we targeting? So, obviously we're now more in the enterprise game. So which group of enterprises are a good fit for our product, and which people within the enterprise? So for example, should we go after the compliance group? Should we go after the marketing group, the production or operations? Like, which groups are our strong suit and which groups are kind of problems, right? You don't want to go after the problem group. You want to go after the group that you think you can really get in front of and have compelling messaging. And you want to find mastery over one. You want to master a persona, And so I think being very clear and saying, hey, these are 500, I think, companies that look like some of our customers for these reasons. And this is the group of people at those companies that I think we do really, really well with. Let's go. And then it's a matter of, let's go find where those people are. So that could be, maybe they go to trade shows. Our industry is actually big on trade shows, so that, it might seem antiquated, but for us, we get a lot of great traction. They might be hanging out on LinkedIn. They might be hanging out on Instagram. They might be, someone like in the IT space, and maybe it's going to be on G2 Crowd or Capterra looking at software all the time, right? But like, where are they going? Like, where are they spending their time? So it's figuring out where they're spending their time and then crafting the right message to get them to kind of just raise their hand and say, maybe I want to hear a little bit more, or maybe I don't want to demo the product yet, but I want to hear more about what you're saying, right? And so I think the more targeted you can get, the better. But again, I think the tendency is, and this has been a learning for me, and I think every kind of entrepreneur starting something, I think, struggles to make this shift, where initially you're just throwing stuff at the wall and just trying to see what sticks. But eventually it's like, when you have something that sticks, you have to stop throwing stuff at the wall and you have to make a bet to say, we're going to go all in on this. And if you put in resources into something that's working, sure, you might maybe lose some of the other, personas or whatever you're talking to, but it is in the long run, or even just the, medium run, going to be way more effective because you're 10xing something that's working. It's just like, and it just seems counterintuitive, where it's like, well, I know we have 2 people on our platform that match this criteria. Let's talk to them. It's like, well, maybe, but we have 20 like this. Let's ignore more that look like the 2. Let's go after the 20, and it's hard to make those decisions because you think, well, let's just do both. Let's do it all. And they're, you almost have to earn the right to go after multiple. I think you got to conquer one and then go to multiple personas. And, but yeah, it's a hard, decision to make, and very scary, I think, for a lot of entrepreneurs to feel like they're limiting themselves in that way.
Yeah, that's for sure. You also spoke about partnerships. That's the one thing that I've been sort of trying to figure out, right? Like, I mean, I can build like a referral program, fairly easy to do. but how do I build a partnership program that actually works? So
Yeah.
I'd love to get your thoughts on like building partnership programs that actually deliver results for, of course, both sides.
So I think there's different ways to look at partnerships, but I think like obviously the most kind of common example you'd think of is this idea of stronger together, right? So maybe you are a platform that does one thing and another, company does another thing, and it's almost like 1 + 1 = 3, right? So it's like you're really stronger together. You really enhance both of your offerings. So I think it's like, there's that kind of product standpoint, but you're just creating more value in the market. And so then when that happens, the incentive is to say, let's almost sell together or go pitch people together. Let's look at your existing, look, I know that this partner makes our product better too. Sure, it costs our companies more money to buy this product, but I know their overall experience, it's 1 + 1 = 3. So it's this idea of like, you have those kinds of aha moments, and you can, there's platforms that do this, but you share, customer lists where it's like, great, I see, you work with these, and, I can provide intros here. You can provide intros here. We have some new opportunities. They're looking for something that you do. Let's kind of sell together. So I think it's really just that, it's finding kind of what are those, 1 + 1 = 3, kind of moments, and then, figuring out how to, accelerate that with those partnerships. So I think it starts with discovery and actual value, and figuring out, can we get there? And if then there is that value, then great. How do we kind of partner together? I also just think it's like there's kind of a balance here between how much value how much value you're providing through the integration or partnership. So like if it's massive, then great, that's going to tip the scales. But it's all, you also want to partner with organizations that are similar, general, like, I wouldn't say like similar size, but like just, like if you're a seed company, it's very rare that you're going to partner with a publicly traded company and you're going to co-sell together, right? And so you can punch above your weight if there's a ton of value there, for sure. But I think it's like finding companies that are kind of similar to your stage, that are hungry, that are looking to grow, looking to lean in, because partnerships only work when both companies are willing to lean in, right? So, and so if something is 1 + 1 = 2, people might be unwilling to lean in. If it's 1 + 1 = 10, then they're much more likely to lean in, and maybe it's even a bigger company would lean in. So it's just really thinking through those kinds of things. But that's generally how I think if you can check those boxes, you can have some successful partnerships. So partnerships is a broad topic, as I'm sure, and there's a lot of different ways to look at it. That's just sort of how I tend to look at it.
Yeah, that's fair. Spencer, sticking, of course, I'm going to go to market. I'd love to learn, like, from your perspective, when it comes to inbound marketing tactics, what are, one or two pillars that you have seen that are working exceptionally well for you?
Yeah, I think it's in our space. It's I think there's a lot of people on LinkedIn. We've had great success from a community marketing perspective, from like an ad perspective on LinkedIn, because that's just where a lot of our audience is. We can be very precise with who we're targeting, with our messaging, all of that stuff. I think that it is sort of the messaging of hey, look, we're building really cool stuff, and it's moving fast, and there's something happening all the time, kind of creating that perception of product, which is not as a perception, it's reality, but just, like, hey, the train's moving really fast. You might want to take a look at this. And so just trying to get people to want to raise their hand and say, that's interesting. I want to look at more. So I think we've had some success from like a kind of product marketing, on, kind of community marketing approach on LinkedIn. The other thing we've seen good results from actually is, it's kind of referral, but it's a lot of it is just, really our happy customers, getting them to review us online, and getting people to, kind of share that story as well, I think has been really helpful for us too. So it's almost like a kind of referral. People make reviews, we push it out to people. So I think that kind of can get people's attention when it feels like one of their peers are saying something good or interesting. So we found some success there as well. There's a number of initiatives. I just think those are the two things that have worked really well for us. And I think our people have said our industry is one of like not a lot of early adopters, but a lot of fast followers. And so kind of creating that FOMO of the product's moving fast, all the stuff you're missing out on. And then, hey, like all these your other peers are saying these cool things about it. It just, people are like, well, you know what, fine. I got to look at this. I got to take a look. Right. And so that's really all you're doing. I think when you're generating MQLs or kind of inbound leads is you're getting people to raise their hand and say this. Okay, fine. I'm going to take a look at this. You're not getting someone, at least in our case, we're not product led. So product led, you're maybe trying to get someone to sign up for a trial, whatever it is. But in our case, it's just pretty much like, hey, I'm raising my hand. Like, I want to take a look. Sure. Like, let's do it.
Awesome. Well, let's just switch gears just a bit. Would love to learn, what is the Scrappy story you have, while building, while building your business today?
Okay, so I think I might have cut out briefly. Can you repeat the question real quick?
I was thinking, what is the scrappiest story you have, while building Aidium today?
Yeah, there's a few of them. Gosh, I mean, I think one of them that comes to mind is we were launching a new customer. They had an integration with a platform that we didn't have yet. It's not like we oversold and said that we had it. It was a part of the, contract that we had billed it by a certain date. The date came and went. I wasn't particularly close to this implementation. And, they were not particularly happy, but they were very committed and believed in the vision of what we were doing, and were very unhappy with where they were at. And so it was one of those things where I rolled up my sleeves and worked with the dev team, and, in a couple of days, we got it working and running for them. And there were people in the organization that told me, it's not worth your time. It's not worth our time. Just cut them loose. And who cares about this integration? And I just said no, and we fixed it. And, that company actually ended up, participating in one of our funding rounds, right? Because it's like, cool. Because, they believed, like they saw that, that we cared, I cared, and we made it happen and delivered for them. And so, I think there's a lot of scrappy moments in startups, and I think it is that ability to, roll up your sleeves and do things that people maybe don't expect or haven't seen before. And so when things aren't going well, it's stressful. It's not always fun, but there's an opportunity there. There's an opportunity for you to roll up your sleeves and make something happen. And that's how you can build a lot of trust with people. So that's one moment I'm certainly proud of, but there's a lot of scrappy moments along the way where it's like, how did we do that? How did we pull that off? That's part of what doing a startup is. And what an entrepreneur is you see ways to do things, and you think about the world a little bit differently. One of the things I always think about is, and goes to why you shouldn't hire too many people too soon, but it's always like there's kind of prescribed ways to do things. And, maybe a really good manager or a really good processor in person looks at climbing a mountain, and they chart their path, and they chart their supplies and their group and everything like that. And I think a great entrepreneur is able to say, well, actually, I see that there's a helicopter over there behind that bush. I'm going to just get in that and fly up to the top of the mountain. It's kind of being able to see the world a little bit differently. And the more that you put yourself in positions to do that, and people see that, it can definitely build a lot of trust, and engagement from people for sure.
That's for sure. Spencer, just one last question that I have for you. Being a father of two, running a business, managing family, managing expectations, VCs, customers, everybody. How do you keep your mental health in check?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. So for me, I think it's understanding what stresses you out, what de-stresses you, what energizes you, what wipes you out. And I think like just writing, if you find yourself frustrated or you're like at your wit's end, just take 10 minutes and write down what are the things that I'm frustrated about. And you just list them. And I've done this sometimes where it's like, there's 15 things I'm extremely frustrated about. Just no filter. It's no one else sees it, right? Okay. What are the things I can deal with and what are the problems I can solve? Okay. Maybe there's 4 of these. This is what I need to do. But maybe there's 4 of them on the list where it's like, I'm frustrated, but I know I can't do anything today. Okay. But like, so the idea is identifying what's causing areas of stress or friction. And then working towards solving. I mean, the best way to help get yourself out of a stressful situation is to start making progress and working towards solutions. And so, I think there's that. And I think that, physically trying to remain active and having a regimen that is de-stressing is super important. I think having a mission that you believe in and you care about that's what gets you through challenging times. And I think, I think we touched on this before we started even, but just like the entrepreneurship journey is a lonely journey. Your friends and family that are not entrepreneurs are going to care about you. They will not understand what you are going through. A tough day at work for them and not discounting anything that they're going through. It's just different. Maybe you can't relate to them and they cannot relate to you. Right. And so it's having someone, and it's not your friends and family or your significant other's job in life to relate to all of your challenges, and like, it's a lot. And so, whether that's having a mental health professional, having a kind of group of people that you engage with, I think that's where having co-founders is really valuable because then you can really commiserate. But having that outlet of people that understand. And I would strongly, as someone who's made these mistakes, strongly advise anybody to not, your executive team cannot be that outlet for you in all of your entrepreneurship, stress. Your significant other, your kids, family, like that cannot be the outlet for it. So you got to find someone to talk to and be able to work through that with. No, it's tough. And I think anyone struggling, or anytime I feel like something's not right, that's where I think just kind of writing it down. What exactly am I feeling? What exactly is stressful? Just even having that on a piece of paper is very important because now it's like you've taken this feeling and you've kind of put it into what are we working with here? And that's definitely helped me, but it's not easy. And there's a lot of high points and low points. And, that's part of what you sign up for as an entrepreneur. And there's no shame in having really bad days and really bad weeks. And that will absolutely happen. So, you just got to keep moving and do the best you can to stay sane throughout the process.
That's for sure. Spencer, this has been so much fun. Such great learning here. How can folks keep up with you and with Aidium?
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's been great. Really appreciate you having me on. And the best thing is to just follow me on LinkedIn. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. Feel free to connect and kind of mention. We chatted through, found me through the podcast. So I post about personal stuff and about Aidium and all that on LinkedIn. So that's the easiest. Find me in other social media. So yeah, it's LinkedIn or nothing.
Oh, nothing. All right. Well, amazing, Spencer. Thank you so much once again for your time. Really appreciate it today.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thanks again.
Thank you.